Hello my bookish friends out there in booktube land, and welcome to another episode of Tristan and the Classics. In this episode, I thought we would take a look at 5 of the greatest villains in literature. So, put on your helmet, strap on your breastplate to thwart the wily machinations of the evil foes of literature, and away we shall go. So the first villain I want to talk to you about from classic literature is from the Three Musketeers. And in fact, it's because of discussing the Three Musketeers with the Classics Book Club, link below by the way, free book club, international membership, and we pull apart classic books together. We were discussing last month the Three Musketeers, and I've always been fascinated with Cardinal Richelieu, but on this rereading it with everybody else, I was struck by just how wicked Milady is. She is a she-devil. If you were to summarise her villainy, as it were, the underpinning villainy, she is vengefulness incarnate. Nothing gets in her way. If she can't have what she wants, if you happen to be the reason that she is stopped from grasping some more power or some more wealth, you may as well, you better wear chainmail around your throat to bed because it's going to be cut. Or if you even slight her, she is going to seek bitter revenge. She cannot let anything past that affects her own view of herself. And if anything sort of is an obstacle to her will, again, she will murder. And she will hunt people down. But not only people she hates, anyone who is linked to the person she hates. So, in The Three Musketeers, D'Artagnan falls in love with a girl called Constance. Now, to keep her safe from the cardinal, whom everyone is scared of, Constance is sent and packed off to like a nunnery south of France. But Milady comes across her, and Milady is angry with D'Artagnan. So what do you think she tries to do to the beautiful Constance, whom she learns D'Artagnan loves? Even the Machiavellian Cardinal Richelieu himself is somewhat scared of Milady, though she has nowhere near the power he has in the state. It says in the book that he was somewhat glad to be rid of such a dangerous ally. And what happens to Milady in the book? Well, you'll have to read it and find out, because it is very enlightening and very good regarding what makes a villain and what kind of character she is. But I'm not going to spoil that. Go and read The Three Musketeers yourself. The second villain that I want to talk to you about is literally evil incarnate. This villain is evil like no other character. And it's one of Shakespeare's great characters, Iago, from the play Othello. Now, Iago is consumed with jealousy over the Moor, Othello, because he wants to be the great general for his republic, but the Moor is favoured by everybody else. The Moor also falls in love with Desdemona, the beauty, who falls in love with him, and Iago can't stand anything good happening to him. But what is so sinister, it's more than sinister, it's just wicked about Iago, is his ability to hide his all-consuming hatred, to mask it, and to use brilliant plotting and scheming to cause Othello to murder his own wife by laying a trap, by laying and insinuating that his wife has been unfaithful, because Iago knows humans and he knows that Othello's weakness is his love of Desdemona and his sense of honour, and that he would be jealous if Desdemona was unfaithful to him. And Iago lays the most wicked plot. And just the way, obviously, if you've read Shakespeare, you know that he's got a masterful way with words. And if, by the way, just say here, if you find Shakespeare hard, please, please, please join my channel, subscribe and watch my Shakespeare videos, because I want to help everyone come to love Shakespeare and understand him, so that you can finally say, oh my days, this is the best playwright the world has ever produced, and just ascend on the wings of his vocabulary, his imagery, his rhetoric. He's just magnificent. Anyway, going back to Iago, I mean, this guy, I do not believe, obviously the idea of villains in books is all subjective, so I may do more of these videos about 5 villains in literature, but personally I would say that no other villain comes close to Iago in pure wickedness, evil, the fierceness with which he hates Othello and yet masks it in a beautiful alabaster calm and becomes his friend in order to destroy him and his wife. There's nothing like it, and Shakespeare's players come alive, they transcend the page itself. And when he says at the beginning, though I do hate him, he's talking of Othello, as I do hell's pains, yet for necessity in the present I must show a flag or sign of love for him. I mean, and he says, and sign it is. In other words, I'm going to put out a flag, a symbol of love and affection for Othello in order to win him in, and then completely, mercilessly, not murder him, that's too easy. I'm going to destroy his whole life and make him feel the pain. Iago is probably the #1 villain ever written. Now, the third villain that I thought of is an unusual one, because right until the end of the book and after the book's finished, you are never quite sure who the villain is. You know the name, but you don't know if it's a single person or a group of people. Do you know who I'm talking about? You may be thinking someone like Moriarty, who is a good villain, but Moriarty we know is a definite individual character. I'm referring to George Orwell's great book, 1984. Big Brother is the villain in this. Now, if you want to sum up kinds of villainy and evil, as it were, Big Brother is that all-pervasive threat. He doesn't give privacy. Nothing is sacrosanct to Big Brother. Big Brother is the ultimate totalitarian, who even goes so far as to control your thoughts, can make you doubt your own understanding of things. Gaslighting would be what he does. The doublespeak, the ministry of truth, the drones that float around looking at you through windows, the fact that there's a large TV in everyone's house which listens to them, and there is only one slither of part of the room that sometimes you can find to stand in where you can't be seen by Big Brother. Big Brother is just staggeringly malevolent. It's an oppressive read. You know, it's probably the ultimate dystopian novel. It's not the first dystopian novel, but maybe the pinnacle. And what happens when either an individual or a group of individuals get to such power that you have privacy removed? It is so dark. And like I say, it's suffocating to read that book. Because there you are in Winston's place, and you just can't seem to escape. There's threat, there's fear. You can't freely speak with people. You can't have individual friendships because everything is monitored. It is a case study in political correctness when it comes to speech. If there's ever an argument against political correctness, it really is 1984, because if you strip away all the sort of fancy words about it, it is a control of language, means it controls interactions, it controls friendships, relationships. Nothing is hidden from Big Brother. I would love Shakespeare to have been around today to be able to grasp this idea, because of course in the Elizabethan age there was no way you could have total and utter control of everything. Yes, Elizabeth had her spy masters. The beginning of real spy rings that made people fearful was around at this point, But the idea that you could be in every home all the time and even change people's thoughts. I mean, Orwell does a wonderful job with it if you've never read it. So go away and read that, because although not a traditional, simple bad guy, Big Brother is horrendous when it comes to being a villain. Now, with a classic adventure story or romance story, even many a tragedy, you probably know that to have a hero you need a villain, the counterbalance, the black against the white, the night against the day. It's chiaroscuro, the shadows, the light and the shade. But in some books, the villain can be a bit part player. It's not there to actually be the foil for the protagonist. And this will happen a lot in books which are thinking books, which are exploring life rather than a tale. And so, thinking of that, one of the guys that I think is a real baddie in the book, a real villain, is Svidrigailov in Crime and Punishment. Now, the interesting thing about Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov is the protagonist, but he's not exactly a good fellow himself, but he's analysing society through the book and, the idea of guilt and the ability to step over the bounds of society, to be the Übermensch, somebody who can literally disregard the rules and live their life separate from that societal stricture. Now, Raskolnikov thinks he would like to be that, but can't do it. However, there is a character in Crime and Punishment, Svidrigailov, who does, you would say, fit the Übermensch type. Because Svidrigailov is just one of the nastiest pieces of work, one of the most amoral characters you find in literature. There is something slightly redeeming to him right at the end, but his presence, which comes slowly creeping from the background through a shadow to a faint haze with a fuzzy outline, to suddenly this character who you've been dreading appearing into the book in full colour. And Svidrigailov, we learn, and if you've read the book you will know, it's rumoured he's murdered his wife. And when he's confronted with this later on, he doesn't actually deny it, doesn't even seem to blink, doesn't have any remorse whatsoever. We know about his seducing or trying to get hold of a young girl in his service. And, nothing's off limits to him. If he wants something, he gets it. And then you've got Dunya, which is Raskolnikov's sister. There's a moment in that book, he comes to where she is, and you're there thinking, Dunya, get out. Dunya, just leave. No, he's not a murderer. Well, he might be, but he's not your classic, I'm going in, Jack the Ripper, going to kill somebody. He's just visiting, but do not be caught, Dunya, on your own with this man, because he has no self-restraint. Not because he can't keep control of his emotions, because he can. Every good villain knows how to control themselves and channel their force, but he has no restraint in what he thinks is wrong or right. If he decides he wants something, then he'll have it. And of course there's an attempted rape scene with Dunya there, and then afterwards something happens to Svidrigailov, which also fits into the book, but you'll have to read it to know how. It's interesting what maybe Dostoevsky was doing with that character. But as for a villain, although he has something slightly redeeming at the end, up until that final bit, he is scary. He's a horrible, horrible character. And you would say there are a number of baddies in Crime and Punishment, a number of characters you can even hate on. But Svidrigailov, he's the character you dislike, but you wouldn't mess with him. You wouldn't go out of your way to deal with him, because he could probably outwit you and then finish you, and you'd find yourself at the bottom of some river somewhere. The fifth and final villain I want to talk about in this video is another one from Shakespeare himself, because the guy was a master at creating characters. Characters which just step up like holograms and walk around before you when you're reading. No amount of descriptive writing could give you Shakespeare's Iago, nor the one I'm about to mention now. He makes them evil and characterizes all of his players simply by their speech. And possibly the most magnetic, hypnotic, persuasive of all baddies is Richard III. And I personally think that Shakespeare's idea of Richard III, right from the off, was one he was excited to do, because in his early histories he starts with Henry VI part 1, Henry VI part 2, then part 3, then Richard III. So it's the Wars of the Roses. But although Richard III is the fourth of the plays, what's interesting about it is you know that the whole lot was schemed around Richard. He is just a baddie with no remorse. He has no conscience and he enjoys his badness. That's the thing with Richard. There's something about him which, though you know he's speaking poison into your ear, he's offering poison to you in a vial marked with a skull and crossbone, you still drink it in because the syrup is so fascinating sweet. You root for him, despite the fact that in Act 1, Scene 1, opening scene of Richard III, he says, "I am determined to be a villain." And he tells you, "I'm just about to kill my brother." As in, I'm going to speak kindly to him, but I'm going to get others to do him in any minute now. What's so great about Richard, though, is he is consistently bad. There is almost no redeeming quality about him, apart from his eloquence, apart from his just charm. Even though he's hunchbacked, one leg shorter than the other, not good looking, he wins women over against their will just through the persuasiveness of his mouth. But one of the best scenes of Richard is not when he is King Richard III. It's going back into the play Henry VI, when he is it Gloucester, the Duke of Gloucester. And just listen to how he describes himself. "Why, I can smile and murder whilst I smile, and cry content to that which grieves my heart, and wet my cheeks with artificial tears, and frame my face to all occasions. I'll drown more sailors than the mermaid shall. I'll slay more gazers than the basilisk. I'll play the orator as well as Nestor, deceive more slyly than Ulysses could, and like a Sinon take another Troy. I can add colours to the chameleon, change shapes with Proteus for advantages, and set the murderous Machiavel to school. Can I do this and cannot get a crown? Tut, were it farther off, I'd pluck it down." Isn't that the best kind of speech? This is a guy that has no conscience, no remorse, and loves being bad. I mean, he's got the biggest chip on his shoulder. The world hasn't been good to him, so he won't be good with the world. To say, I am as great an orator as Nestor. I can drown more sailors than the infamous mermaids, the sirens who drown people on the rocks. I can slay more people, more gazers, people who look at me, than a basilisk, the snake thing with the eyes that turned a person to stone. And, he can laugh and he can murder while he's laughing. He can fake any situation. He can fake to be good when he's bad. And then he says, "I can take Machiavel to school." Now, we have the word Machiavellian meaning, well, it's become to mean sinister, megalomaniac, authoritarian who controls people and manipulates them from the top. He says, "I can set the murderous Machiavel to school." He's a schoolboy compared to what I can do to people. I mean, that's what is so charming about Richard. He is a villain who is barbaric. He kills anyone in his way. But he charms you with it. He tells you what he's thinking, what he's going to do, and you just watch agog as you see him achieve his ends. Now, there is, right at the end of Richard III, in his tent before the Battle of Bosworth, there is a moment in which he suddenly gets a pang of conscience about his future soul, his eternal soul. But he soon puts that away and gets ready to fight the next day. He is definitely he may actually be not the best bad guy, because I think Iago takes that, but in my books, he is by far and away my favourite baddie. No one speaks like him. And you just want to be his mate, and yet you know if you were his mate, there's a good chance within a fortnight you'd be dead. Anyway, so there are my 5 villains from classic literature, 5 great villains. We had Iago, we had Big Brother, we had Svidrigailov, we had Richard III, and we had Milady, who really is a wicked character. Who would you pick as your 5 favourite villains in literature? Leave a comment down below. And if you haven't already, please go and check out my Shakespeare Explained. Since I've talked about him, I've got a playlist, Shakespeare Explained. If you want to get into Shakespeare, or maybe you don't, but you think you should, or actually I'd like to, but I find him hard, go and watch some of the videos, because the language is just exquisite once you understand it. And all my videos take you line by line through speeches. Anyway, until the next time, I wish you joy in your reading.